Hey, it's producer Scott, and this is the Neutral Cider Hotel podcast. Now, for my fourth stop on this UK tour, I headed north, all the way to Scotland, specifically the East Neuk of Fife in Scotland, in a little coastal town called Anstruther. And I went all this way to spend time with one of my longtime friends, one of the OGs of this podcast, and an absolute rock star, Mr. Grant Hutchison. Now, as you listen to this interview, you're going to hear some squeals and some banging. And no, it is not Freddie, his dog, who is also the official dog of the Neutral Cider Hotel podcast. It is actually his adorable baby daughter, Wren. And she joined us for this because, well, Grant's got dad duties, and one of them was watching her, and she decided not to sleep for the interview. So here we go. But nonetheless, we got right into it and had a proper chat and spoke about how he's been getting on this past year. We also talked about music and his feelings about getting back into it after Frightened Rabbit ended. You see, last year he joined the Scottish band called the Twilight Sad as their new drummer. And soon after joining, they went on this massive worldwide tour, opening for this teeny tiny little band you might have heard of, The Cure. So yeah, it was really interesting to hear how that came about. We also talked about his ambitions to expand cider in northern Scotland. He's got some really good ideas there. An exciting bit of news about his legendary cider shop, Abel, and his aspirations for the future of this very podcast. It was really nice to just sit down and catch up with an old friend. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So here we go. It's my chat with Grant Hutchison on the Neutral Cider Hotel podcast. Special check-in episode. It's Scott reporting live from the United Kingdom. Sometimes more united than others. And, as I said in other episodes, I have been out here, came out here originally for Gabe's wedding celebration, and then have been popping around the English countryside. And most recently, I headed north to see my good friend and, of course, the consummate one of the big three for the Neutral Cider Hotel, Mr. Grant Hutchison. Grant, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm well, thank you.
Yes. That's the way all interviews start. You go, how do I answer that question? So we've been on hiatus, as I've said in other episodes, for a year and a half or so, a little bit before Gabe's child was born. And I'm catching up with everybody from the show so that everyone knows what's going on. So what has been happening in your life in the last year and a half?
Quite a lot, actually. Quite a few big changes. We also had another child added to our brood.
Your future apple pickers?
Maybe apple pickers. Probably get them in the shop before anything else.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so we had another daughter, little girl called Autumn Wren. Autumn, actually, part of the reason for that was after the wonderful Autumn Stoshek from Eve's Cidery. There we go. And she's awake.
Perfect time.
Well, let's see if that lasts. I
can pause if you want.
Yeah, you might need to.
Okay.
So yeah, I think before we were rudely interrupted there, we've got a new guest with us, sitting in her jumperoo. So yeah, we my past year and a half has been I guess quite different. Added as I say, another little girl to the family. Freddie wants out.
This is all classic Neutral Cider Hotel stuff right here.
Just like old times.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing's changed.
I'm sitting in a slightly different position in my house, but yeah, nothing changes. And I also this past year got back into playing drums again. With another band, with a band called Twilight Sad, a Scottish band. They're friends of mine and contemporaries of ours. As both of us were assigned to the same label, kind of grew up together as bands, and we're in the same circles and became close. And the opportunity came up to play with them. So yeah, I've done that, and it's been not quite the year I thought it would be, even after accepting that new job. It's been pretty intense, pretty busy.
So a couple things. One thing I remember you told me was that after you stopped playing, you were like, yeah, I don't know I don't know what's next for me in music. And then you said, but you always said in the back of your mind, if Twilight Sad ever called, you'd be in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wasn't something I ever anticipated happening, but it always was, yes, the only gig that I would have fully committed to doing.
Yeah.
Knowing how intense it can be, how much time it takes up, and doing that with a family.
Yeah.
Would have to be something that I was 100% emotionally in with, not just playing session for someone or starting something new, or, again, it's not that I'm a diva or anything, but when you start something new when you're in your 20s, and you've got to, slog around, several countries and continents in a van, and that's fun as a nearly 40-year-old man now. Doesn't really appeal to me as much, so it's not that I'm saying, I'm only going to tour if I'm on a bus or anything like that, but right. There's a level of, and also it's I've got, as I've mentioned, I've got 2 kids now, a family.
Yeah.
I have more responsibility, emotionally and financially that has to be met, so yeah, it was kind of, so when that opportunity came up, it wasn't, even though I'd had it in the, as I would say yes to it, it was still something I had to consider and chat about with Jay to make sure it was the right thing.
So I just want to make sure it doesn't go without saying, you went on tour with Twilight Sad, and you guys had another little band that was playing with you guys on this tour. Who was that? Yeah,
we brought The Cure out with us on the road, give them a leg up. They'd been at it for a few years, and never quite got there. So we one of the first things that came in, or that happened, was to go on tour with The Cure and in Europe at the end of 2022, and then around the US in 2023 in summer. So yeah, I mean, incredible. I even, with Frightened Rabbit, never toured at that scale for that length of time. We played some of the venues that we did with The Cure supporting other bands, but we never did a kind of 2-month solid tour of those kind of amphitheaters and arenas. It was, for me, it was a totally new experience, although it was familiar in a lot of ways. It was very different from what I used to in a lot of ways as well, and with a whole new set of people. As even though I'm close with Twilight Sad and friends with them, you don't really know someone until you go on tour with them. In that, when you're in that job, it's you're so close with those people, and coming in, it was a new experience for me to come in as the new guy, because previously, I'd been in, was in Frightened Rabbit from the beginning, so that's a different dynamic as well, you know. So there's a lot to get used to again, and having never done it with kids, or you know, as a married man, you know, I'd done it with partners previously, but you know, it's again, that's a whole other thing. So yeah, it was great, and but a lot to kind of relearn, I guess.
Did you find yourself kind of reigniting that spark for music again in a weird sort of way?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was part of my life that I definitely, not walked away from. It was kind of, it was taken from me, I guess, really more than anything. You know, it wasn't really in my control. And it, you know, I kind of always thought of myself as, you know, not even really a musician. You know, I was the drummer in Frightened Rabbit. That was it. You know, even when that band was, you know, in between tours and things like that, I didn't look to do anything else.
Yeah.
You know,
I
didn't. It was the first professional gig I ever did or had. You know, so it didn't feel like when that ended, and obviously there are the emotional attachments to to how it ended, you know, but it wasn't like, okay, well, pick myself up and get the next drumming job,
right?
You know, because had Frightened Rabbit ended in a less dramatic way and in that more natural way, or a way that most bands do, just by saying, "Oh, do you know what? That's it. It's done."
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't have looked for anything else in that situation either. You know, not necessarily, for all the same reasons. You know, being a 40-year-old man, having a family, and you know, so yes, I wasn't really sure whether music was for me anymore. You know, but I think being that band and that group of people and that music with the Twilight Sad, you know, it was easy in a lot of ways to just, you know, slide into that role. I know the songs, I love the songs, I love the people, and although, as I mentioned just before, there was a lot to relearn, there was a lot that just clicked and came back as well, you know. And that was, I mean, I was rusty as hell. If you were at any of the early shows, I'm not saying it would have, you know, massively affected it, but certainly by the US tour, by that time we were like, we were in the swing of it, in our groove, and we were really like smashing it.
Okay, so that's amazing. And I would say, I don't know, for a lot of people, an even unimaginable experience to go get back into music, reconnect with it, get to go out on the road with the Cure, go through Europe, go through America, South America later in 2020
coming up. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. But turning gears a little bit to cider, since that's what kind of brought at least many of the people on this podcast together. During the recording of the Neutral Cider Hotel, you had your first child, Sula, and then soon after you opened a shop, Abel, and I don't have the ding, so it's not gonna. Maybe I could put it in later.
Yeah, you can produce that, can't you?
Maybe I'm rusty. I don't know. It's been a while. What's been going on with Abel and cider for you in the last?
So Abel's continued to carry on. It's been there's been ups and downs, as everyone in any small business really, but I guess maybe even more specifically retail. Yes, you know what we're talking about, don't you? This is
hurry up and save up for my college fund.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this on headphones and you have to turn the volume up, I apologize for the frequent squeals. So yeah, much like any small business and retail specifically, it's been up and down.
Yeah.
You know, it's been hard, and it's such a niche thing, you know. But we've been this summer has been good.
Yeah.
I think what happened was that we opened in 2021 in the summer, at the start of summer, and that was still in the UK and in Scotland anyway. It was staycation, summer of staycation, where people didn't go abroad because they weren't allowed to travel. So that was very busy, and obviously it was our first summer, so we got a little bump from that, and then the following year, last year's summer, people were allowed to travel abroad again, so they did, and everyone did, and the East Nook of Fife, where we are, is very seasonal, and it's a holiday destination, and the same amount of people didn't come as they normally do, so it was quite a dry summer, and for us, and
we were nervous.
Yeah, I mean, we were approaching this summer thinking, well, if this is what summer is like from now on, this is probably not going to work, unfortunately, but it wasn't like that. People have come back, and businesses all around the region felt it in 2022, and some didn't make it, and we're just lucky that we managed to ride it out, so it's been very positive this summer, been really good, and I think the other thing is as well that we forget is that when you're so involved in something, right, because it's your thing and it's your project, you expect that everyone else will also know about it, because you're like, well, I post on Instagram every day, and the shop's bright orange and Anstruther's tiny, so why doesn't everyone know about it? But they just don't, so we're still having people coming in, locals, who are like, oh, I've been meaning to come in for since you opened, and you're like, we've been open 2 years now, what have you been doing? But that's just, that's the way it is, so we're still building that local support, that is, and that's what's going to carry us through. It's great having the tourists in the summer, and they come on their holidays, and they spend a little bit more, and they might buy something that's a little bit nicer. But what we want to do is serve the local community and have those people consistently coming back and drinking cider, and that's how it's going to kind of help us as a shop and cider as a category to grow, is having returning customers,
Just foundational.
Yeah.
Which is a good segue point into my next question, and we'll wrap this up shortly so Ren can get all the love she wants. You talked about the locals, and I know we talked in the early days about restock. No ding for restock. And then as things progressed, well, I'll let you tell the story. What happened with restock over the last couple of years, and what are you looking at it now?
So when we moved to where we are now from Glasgow, I continued with restock, which was my kind of wholesale distribution cider company, selling to businesses wholesale for them to then sell on to the consumer, and being in Fife and still trying to distribute and service the central belt of Scotland became non-viable.
Yeah.
So it sort of, I took one step towards trying to solve that by partnering up with a larger distributor, but it just wasn't the right fit in terms of their model and what they do and how they sell with a product in a category that's so niche and so specialist. Without me on the ground as much to sell, it didn't really work. So it's this restock sort of just unfortunately slowly just sort of died away. But recently, I just didn't want to let it go. It was like my baby. It was pre-able, and it was doing well, and it was, I see, for me, and the getting that side of that wholesale side of trade of the business is almost a better way of spreading the word, because you're going into multiple stores and restaurants and bars and getting it in there rather than just having the one shop, so we took the decision, and Jay and I decided that we would start restock back up again, even though it's kind of never gone away completely, but we would start up again just in Fife, and just in our local area to distribute ciders to bars, restaurants, shops around here. So it's. I guess it's it's going back to that local community aspect where we don't live in Glasgow anymore, and we're not part of that central belt. So yes, that's where most of the kind of business and custom is, but we live here, and so let's try and grow something here. So that's our plan. And I made so many errors with restock because I had no idea. I was a drummer, and then all of a sudden I started a distribution company. And
who let me do this? Who let me start a company?
I mean, it was insane. So I didn't. I'll be completely honest. I had literally no idea what I was doing. I didn't know about profit margins. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know how much I should have been making, how much I should have been selling it for. So I just made it up on the hoof, and the import side of it as well, which all along was going to be my USP. Not post, but during COVID, post Brexit as well, just became impossible, untenable. So that's something that potentially would maybe go back to, but again with open eyes and with experience and understanding what works and what doesn't. So that's another reason for starting it up, is like, okay, well, I know let's focus on a small amount of producers and let's really target the markets and the venues that I think it's going to work in,
right?
And start there and build from that, So yes, we're and then the kind of, I guess, the long term goal or hope is that that kind of Able and Restock can sort of become a bit more integrated and become a sort of one-stop shop for cider, really, whether you're a wholesale customer or whether you're a consumer. And not because I want to grow and take over the world with Able and Restock, but just, again, it would be local, it would be Fife, but it would be that the kind of thing where it becomes, people are like, whether they're on the industry side or the customer side, they know where to go to get it.
Do you know what happened there?
What?
I think you accidentally fell into a good business plan.
I might have just done. Don't actually put that on the podcast. People just copy me now.
Oh, right. You just
if Felix is listening, like Felix listens to our podcast. But, it's definitely it is, and it came out of my stubbornness of not wanting to let Restock go. And a few of my suppliers probably will be listening to this, and I probably should have just cut it at the time that we moved and been like, you know what, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So, and then figured out how to make it work. But, again, I think it's the same with when I started Restock, the only way you find these things out is to make those mistakes and not make them again,
Good on you, by the way, for just jumping in. Like, I mean, that's scary, but you've learned a lot since you've been doing it, and now you're at a good place. But sometimes people won't even take that first step. So, yeah, no, it was a bit daunting for sure. But yeah, I always had faith in the products I was selling and my ability to get it to some people. Yeah,
I guess that's it. You just making my goals and aspirations quite high and maybe out of reach, but if you then don't actually reach them, then where you do get to is still maybe beyond where you thought.
Yeah.
Which is the case. I'm very proud of what Restock did in Edinburgh and Glasgow and how it helped build that category. So now, time to do it somewhere else, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, having listened to the podcast and listened to you talk about where you live and everything, I just had no concept about any of it. And, having come out here now. Well, now you know how much of a ball ache it is to get here, at the very least, Yeah, my story was slow trains, missing a flight, staying overnight at Gabe's, then getting a flight early the next morning, which the Bristol airport was just bananas, and then getting out here. And then it's
best case scenario for me, if you drive or you take a taxi, which would be kind of expensive, you can get out pretty quick. But if you take a bus, a couple hours. So you're pretty far. If you get in Edinburgh, you're a couple hours north. So it's up there, but it's beautiful. I mean, it's like when people in New York go up to Connecticut for the summers or whatever, right? They go, it's a few hours north, but then they get these beautiful coastlines. They get some room, you're not all jammed up in the city.
Totally. You had fish and chips last night?
For the first time ever.
Yeah.
For the first time ever.
Battered haddock supper.
Yeah.
Sat in a car with a boot full of cider on our way to a tasting.
Yeah, it was great.
So
lovely experience.
Yeah.
Had so much fun.
Yeah, no, we love it here. It's we've not had any regrets since moving, and I think with opening the shop, as I've mentioned before, it's obviously clearly a very niche thing to do in a small town. It's kind of, people will come in who are on their holidays and be like, I did not expect to find a cider shop in Anstruther, but I think there are pros and cons to here and doing it in a city where it would maybe be more instantly successful, or footfall would be higher,
right?
But rent would be higher and competition would be more intense, and we would probably have to diversify our choice in the shop, rather than going, do you know what, this is a cider shop, so if you're going to come in here and you want to buy a bottle of booze, it's going to be a cider. And the only other option they have really is the small supermarket, which we don't share products with because we can't compete with them, so it's sort of worked in our favor in that sense. And also people now, in Anstruther, in the local area, you've got people who are like, oh well, now I drink cider because there's a shop that sells it, which is great. Whereas in Glasgow, probably have more people through the door, but in between their return visits, they would probably then visit the beer shop or the wine shop or the supermarket in between those times. So whereas here, it feels very much like, our shop is where people now buy their booze if they're going to have a drink.
Right. Yes,
they'll go to the Co-op and buy a cheaper bottle of wine or, a bottle of Westons or something like that. But more often they'll come back to us.
Well, I mean, I saw it firsthand when we were at the shop the other day and just saw people just coming in going, yeah, just want to grab a couple. It was great.
That's it. And that's what's kind of good. And I think we spoke about this yesterday, and the same goes for Able as does for Restock in terms of learning from mistakes. The stock that we filled the shop with stuff that we wanted to drink initially.
We were the posh cider shop when you started.
Exactly.
See,
wow,
she knows.
And like you saw the other day, what is really great and what we really need is people coming in and buying 3 cans or 4 stubby bottles of cider, and that's that's what they drink on a Friday night. They choose us for the booze that they're going to have on a Friday, Saturday night.
Exactly.
As opposed to going to the Co-op, and it's the mix of all those people is what we need. Whereas at first it was very much like, we're going to sell to people who are going to pour cider and dissect it and drink it and, and sniff it and take, and it's like, yes, those people still come in as well and they buy online too. But yeah, I want people to come in and just buy their cans and we have cans of beer that help bring people in as well. So yeah, it's we've figured out our customer base, and we're now filling the shelves to serve them as opposed to filling the shelves to attract a certain type of person.
And one last tag on this, and I can cut it out if you want, but this isn't going to come out for at least a week or two. So do you want to talk about your new license?
Yeah, so we just got we applied for a license to kind of do to serve drinks that can be consumed on site.
Which you had talked about on the podcast. It's something you aspirationally wanted to do.
Yeah, so the reason we didn't do it right away was kind of like, let's just test the water with this whole venture, and see. And also it was a size issue. We were like, oh, it's a bit small, and also we went to make sure that the neighbours, we got on with everyone, and we didn't go straight in with having late nights and stuff like that all the time. So we applied for it this summer, and we got it this week, and it's going to allow us, it's not really so much that we can turn into a bar now. It means that we can host tastings with 10 to 12 people.
It's cool.
That can pour proper measures for them, because we can currently, before we got our license, we could pour samples for people to taste, which we did occasionally, but you can't really have stuff open all the time. You open one bottle and pour a sample for someone. You might not get anyone else who wants a sample all day, and then you've got to pour the rest of it down
or drink it.
Yeah, but then you're drinking all your profits for one person who might not even buy a bottle if they didn't like it. So now it means we can do those more tastings that are more kind of official, and we can also have people who can come in and sit down and have a glass of cider or a bottle of cider or a can of cider and sit in and drink it. So that's hopefully gonna just be another little boost for the business, and
just want that.
Ben is currently trying to grab the microphone.
Yeah,
obviously,
future podcaster. I'm telling you,
looks like it. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather you were like a tennis player or a golfer or something.
Yeah, there's not a lot of money in this.
Yeah, no. So we got basically, yes, we got approved for a kind of a bar license, and so now when people visit the Snook, which hopefully all of our listeners will do, you'll be able to sit down, have a little glass, have a chat, and maybe even there'll be a tasting on when you're here as well, or we can do private tastings. That's the other thing we can do. If you are visiting, you can contact us and say, look, we've got a group of 6 people. We want to do a tasting. Can we do it? Yes. Now we totally can.
And that's what I want to say is if you're coming to Scotland, don't just pop into Edinburgh and then think you've seen Scotland. You got to come up to the countryside, and no better reason than to come up here and try some cider and see this beautiful area that Grant works and his family lives. One final question is we're going to go have some more fun with Ren, which is, as we've done the podcast, we did it for a couple of years. I don't think I mentioned it on the other episodes, but we broke 100,000 people listen to this podcast, which is quite a feat, which I'm excited for. That's good for cider and good for our egos. Yes. As towards the hiatus, as we got closer and closer, we all knew you were the one that had the most challenge, at the time with the kid and a shop and doing all the things you do. Now we've got, Martin with a child on the way. We've got Gabe with his 14-month-old, and everyone's busy. But everyone, even you guys, when I talk to you, you still have enthusiasm for the podcast. It's just a matter of finding the time. But I mean, I'd love to hear, how you feel.
Yeah, I think it was a very positive thing to do. It got all of us probably through lockdown and COVID in one way or another.
Yeah.
And I think back to specific episodes or stories or things that happened, and some of the funniest times I've had. Just uncontrollable
side splitting, ab hurting laughter,
and I'd love to go back to that. I mean, I think we were saying yesterday in the car, I'm the one that's coming out the other side of in terms of
everything, having
time and commitments that will allow me to take 2 or 3 hours a week or a fortnight to do something like that. I don't know if I ever said this on the podcast. I know I said it kind of off air, but I got my kind of, not an apology, but I got my comment from Gabe as to
100%.
Oh, I get you. Well, I get now why that was impossible. And Martin, I await your text as well when you have your child and you can go, oh yeah, right, okay, now it makes sense.
Gabe actually said it to me, not as an apology, but he let me know that he apologized to you. He reached out and he
messaged me like,
oh man,
okay, I get it, because I you guys were all kind of trying to sort of figure out a way of how we could make it work.
Yeah.
But it's just you don't know until you go through what it's like as
Totally.
becoming a new parent and having that responsibility, and it just completely takes over your life. And I thought I knew. I'm one of those people who thought they knew.
Yeah.
Because I'd seen friends and family go through it and do it, and you're like, can't be, I know it's going to be hard, but it's not going to be that hard, and it is.
that hard.
So I'll look forward to hearing from Martin once he has the time to sit down and look at his phone. Of course, that's the other thing,
Right.
I'd love to. I think we can safely say that the podcast will be back in some form or another. When that'll be and how frequently that'll be, is going to be dictated to by these little people. But yeah, it's and when we talk to people, cider makers or just people in the industry about it, it's always remembered fondly.
Yeah.
People were like, there wasn't anything. There's nothing like it, and there's not, and also there's actually nothing like it in the drinks industry. The way we did it, the people we had on was, it was. So yeah, I think it's something I would love to pick back up, but there's no way I'm putting any of that pressure on Martin or Gabe right now, because or myself, Ren's only 6 months old. I say I'm coming out the other side. It's not going to be for a while.
Right. That's all good. Well, look, I'll let you get back to your little one. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for hosting me. I loved hanging up here with you. I really enjoyed your shop. I love this area. Obviously, I love you and your family.
Well, thank you for making the effort, because I know it was gargantuan, the effort. So yeah, it's been lovely seeing you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, man.